Whatever tomorrow brings, I'll be there with open arms and open eyes, yeah. Whatever tomorrow brings, I'll be there. I'll be there, yeah. Amazing song. I had a hard time just deciding which rock alternative song called Drive I was going to sing. And I chose Incubus over REM because I like it a little bit more. Not knocking REM, their song Drive is also fabulous. If you haven't guessed it yet, we are reviewing the X-Files Season 6 episode Drive. It's the first Monster of the Week episode after the Season 6 premiere, which is pretty ballin'. And for a lot of people, and this is what I didn't realize until I started doing research for this review, is a lot of people put this in their top 10 episodes. They really love it, and I can definitely see why. It's personally not in my top 10 episodes that I love, but I do love it for one pretty particular reason, but it's got some other amazingly awesome things. I got on my daughter's Elton John glasses today, so I'm sure she'll get upset with me when she comes home and sees this video. So Drive, well, let's get into it. It's written by Vince Gilligan, and if you know trivia about this episode, you probably know that Vince Gilligan created a little show. You may have heard of it. It's called Breaking Bad. It's one of the greatest television shows of all time, and it stars a one Bryan Cranston. And this is the episode where Vince Gilligan met Bryan Cranston, and the rest is history. We wouldn't have Breaking Bad without this episode. We wouldn't have the character of Walter White, played famously by Bryan Cranston, if not for this episode of The X-Files. But the character Bryan Cranston does play in this episode, Mr. Crump, is pretty, I got a lot to say about him. He's a complicated character. Let's say that. He's not a great character, but the cow farm down the road is like hauling equipment and hay today, so that's probably going to cause a lot of noise. Let's get into it. So, this is the time in the series when the X-Files have been closed down. I think this is the second time. How many times does the X-Files close down and then reopens in the series? And Mulder and Scully have been put on like this shit detail, like doing background checks and what have you. Pretty much just to punish them. Pretty much just to punish Mulder, I think, for being fucking annoying. So, they're also under the supervision of Assistant Director Kersh, a.k.a. Mean James Earl Jones. My spouse called him that when we were getting ready to do the review for Existence, and I can't ever unsee it. So he's Mean James Earl Jones. So Mulder and Scully are under his supervision, and unlike Mr. Skinner, he gives them zero allowances. Mr. Kersh is the strict parent. If you want a good metaphor, Kersh and Skinner are like the two... ow, a fly's biting my ankle. They're like the two parents who divorced and split the kids go to Skinner's house on the weekend. He's the fun parent, and they go and live with Kersh the rest of the week. And Kersh is the parent who will not stop at McDonald's. He will not buy you an apple pie at McDonald's. So it's a pretty good metaphor. So the episode begins with the coldest of cold opens, I think, in any X-Files episode. It very much breaks the fourth wall. You see this newscast. It's like breaking news. There's this car chase. And it's very much talking directly to you, the audience member. That's pretty ballin' writing device. Props to Vince Gilligan. Vince Gilligan has some astounding writing in this episode, and he has some really, really shitty writing in this episode. So it's definitely the gray area as far as Vince Gilligan's writing goes. It's no Pusher or Paper Hearts, but it's got some good moments. So the newscast is about this guy, and he's driving down the highway in I think it's a blue Nova. Someone in the show called it a Barracuda. I'm not really sure. It's a pretty fucking cool car. It looks like my mom's old blue Nova from when I was a baby. Anyway, he's driving, and they believe he has a hostage in the back of the car. But as it turns out, his name is Mr. Crump, played famously by Bryan Cranston. And the person in his car is his wife. And she's in some sort of severe distress. And he's trying to get her to help. Now, when I was 14 and I watched this episode for the first time back in the year of our Lord, 1998, this was it was a very shit your pants moment. Like, I had my snacks and I had my giant tumbler full of purple Kool-Aid, and I was ready to watch this new episode of The X-Files, which, of course, I had heard about because I followed The X-Files religiously. And when I sat down to watch it and the episode came on, I was like, oh shit, where's my X-Files? This isn't X-Files. And it's very clever. Anytime any show uses that fourth wall device, it's very good. So the cops put spikes in the road. I asked my spouse if they do that anymore, and he thinks they do. I don't know. If you know if they put spikes in the road in your state, please let me know to stop high-speed chases. Anyway, the car stops, of course. The tires are popped. They drag Mr. Crump out of the car. They're wrestling him to the ground. They get his wife in the police car. She's still just not doing well at all. He's screaming at them that his wife needs his help. And then you get this shot. It's really spooky how they do it. Like, the newscaster's like, oh, okay, well, I guess everything's fine. You know, we got this guy. The woman's safe. And then you see Mrs. Crump bust her fucking head against the police car window, and you just see a splatter of blood. And it's terrifying. I've always said The X-Files does body horror really well when they lean into it, and this is an episode with a fucking lot of body horror, and it's A+. It just I'm almost 39 years old, and goddamn, it still hits when you see that blood splatter against the window in the cold open. It's like, yeah, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore. You get the titles sequence, and then you see this guy. He is a sugar beet farmer. I love this guy, by the way. I don't think we even learn his name. Or maybe we do. I don't know. Or I'm misremembering it. So Mulder and Scully are there to do a background check for him. He mistakes them for Jehovah's Witness, which is hilarious. Mulder chimes in and says, we're not Jehovah's Witness, but we have a copy of the Watchtower, which is the Jehovah's Witness little pamphlet that they hand out to you about their faith. And I gotta say, that's kind of funny. I don't know if it was intentional. This is a Vince Gilligan episode, so I'm going to say it probably was. But the batshit theories that Mulder is peddling is not that far off the mark from Jehovah's Witness or Mormons who believe they will go to space heaven with their alien dad. So, like, it's not that far off the mark, but Mulder still drags faiths. So, you know, fucking hypocrite. Anyway, they're doing the background check. Mulder asks Scully for a little cheese with his wine. That's right! We are in peak whiny boy Mulder era, which makes my pussy so dry. Like, I'm re-listening to the Sex Files podcast, which is the greatest X-Files podcast of all time. And one of the co-hosts, I believe it's Stevie, she said, oh God, Mulder's so hot until he opens his mouth. And I'm like, yes, couldn't he just be quiet and let me look at this hot idiot, you know? Like, that's a pretty good description of Mulder. Like, he's great until he opens his mouth, and then he's just an insufferable person. So he sees this newscast on the Farmer's TV. Another great X-Files trope. We have information exposition via television right when the characters walk into the room. You know, that happens in real life. It's not like Mulder watched 15 minutes of Happy Days and then this newscast came on. That's what would happen in real life, which would actually be kind of funny. That'd be a funny fic. Like, Mulder's just skanking around this guy's house watching daytime television. So, he tells Scully, he's like, "Oh, I smell an X-File." And they go outside and Scully kind of catches him talking to the sheriff who was arrested this man, Mr. Crump. And Mulder and Scully get off on working the X-Files in secret. Like, it's just, you saw it in The Host when they were kind of working the X-Files in secret. And you see it here. Like, Mulder says, "Scully, let's go. Nobody has to know." And then he, like, licks his lips, like, and he, like, waggles his eyebrows at her. And I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. Like, this is Mulder and Scully's foreplay, is what this is. Working the X-Files in secret is their, puts the spark back in their marriage. I got your number. Also, Scully's trying so good to be a good FBI agent and, like, not fall for Mulder's bullshit. But, of course, she does. Because she's Dana Scully and she has low self-esteem. Poor baby. So, they go off to Nevada. Where, is it Nevada or Nevada? One of my friends that lives in Nevada? I gotta ask her how you pronounce it. People from Nevada, please tell me. Am I mispronouncing it? I want to know. I mean, people mispronounce things in our state all the fucking time, so I could see how that would piss you off. Anyway, sorry if I mispronounced, is what I'm saying. So, they go talk to this sheriff's deputy. I think it's in Elko, Nevada. And, again, the X-Files employing these beautiful shots in their California location. Beautiful desert shots. It's really pretty. A lot of people bitch about the X-Files move from Vancouver to, California at the beginning of season 6. But, I kind of like it. Like, you get these gorgeous desert shots, and I love the desert, so I like it. It fucks for me. So they're talking to the sheriff's deputy, and Mulder's like, "This guy, Mr. Crump, had no record. Why would he just drive off with his wife at like 100 miles an hour and then steal a car?" And the sheriff's deputy's like, "LOL, don't know, don't care." So Scully's gonna take a look at poor Mrs. Crump, right? God. Minding her own business, making breakfast, and then her husband takes her on a high-speed chase and her head explodes. So, they go into the morgue and her and this pathologist are like performing this autopsy on Mrs. Crump. And they're looking in her ear. And the pathologist is like, there's no entry wound into this woman's head that killed her. There's just an exit wound where her skull got blown out. So Scully looks in her ear, and when I was a little kid, I had a lot of ear infection troubles, a lot of ear infection yuckiness, where all kinds of nasty shit was coming out of my head. And so this episode is triggering for a whole entirely different reason than what you think. Trigger warning, ear infections. Anyway, Scully is not wearing a mask or goggles. I want to reach to the TV and shake her. I'm like, "Scully, you're a medical doctor. You keep telling people that. Put on goggles and a mask, baby, please." Anyway, Mrs. Crump's ear shoots blood at Scully, and it lands on her shirt, almost in her mouth. Please put a mask on. So, yeah, so that's fucking terrible. It's horrifying. Like, this episode very much leads into body horror, and it's great. Anyway, Mr. Crump is in his cell, and he starts to hear this ringing in his ears, and it freaks him out. And when I was a little baby and I first watched this, I think for a couple months after I watched this episode, you know, you'll get some tinnitus sometimes. You'll get a little ringing in your ear. And it always freaked me out. I was like, oh shit, do I have the spooky Navy disease that was on the X-Files? This episode is brought to you by water and lapis lazuli. Cheers. Excuse me. I went down the wrong way. So, Mr. Crump starts freaking the fuck out. The doctors take him in the ambulance. He's not well. He's going into like this shock. He's going into this coma. And as the ambulance speeds up to about 70 miles per hour, his symptoms start to be relieved. For whatever reason, when this severe tinnitus starts in his head, which you find out later leads to people's brains exploding, literally, when they speed up in a moving vehicle, in this case, then it's the symptoms are relieved, the pressure is relieved. So then Mr. Crump, who's a smart guy, he steals the gun of a sheriff's deputy, and Mulder's following along right behind the ambulance, and he turns around, pulls the gun on Mulder, and bump, 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 spooky boy got taken hostage. So Scully calls Mulder. She yells at some people for being in the morgue and not having quarantine outfits on. And I love it when Scully yells. I wish she'd yell at me. That's my kink. And Dana Catherine Scully yelling at me. So she calls Mulder and she's like, hey, bro, whatever the fuck's going on here, it's catching. It could be contagious. She's like, you don't need to go near Mr. Crump. This happens a lot in the X-Files where one of them is telling the other, like, hey, you can't go near this thing and this person. And they're, like, right next to that thing or that person. And it's kind of a cheesy writing device, but it's the X-Files. I'll let it slide. So, of course, Mr. Crump has his gun on Mulder. And Mulder's like, well, I can't do that. And Mr. Crump's taking me hostage. And Scully's like, motherfucker. So Mr. Crump puts the gun on Mulder and he says, drive. And I'm not usually turned on by men, but these two kings in the same car, they're pretty fucking hot, okay? So, you get to know Mr. Crump a little more. This is one of my chief problems with the writing. Not just in this episode. I'm not going to get down too hard on Vince Gilligan, because he's a pretty great writer. But throughout the series, they will have man characters who think and do atrocious things, and then the show will try to make them sympathetic. Like, I want to like Mr. Crump. He seems interesting and amazing and cool. Like, he's played by Bryan Cranston, which is just amazing. Love Bryan Cranston. And he's quirky. He believes in government conspiracies. He's basically like rough around the edges Mulder. Like, he's Mulder, blue collar Mulder. He like has this unwavering devotion to his wife. But the moment this man started spewing hatred, like anti-Semitic hatred towards Jewish people, I did not listen to anything else he had to say. I didn't want to. I'm like, okay, the minute you opened your mouth and said that, dude, you lost my sympathy. Like, why does the X-Files do this? Like, why does it take these men who think and do irredeemable things and say, like, oh, but aren't they a nice guy? I'm like, fucking no. Like, doesn't he love his wife? I'm like, yeah, a lot of terrible people love their wives. I mean, that's not an excuse for what they're doing. And it really shows, like, who's in the writer's room with the X-Files. It's like, only a privileged white man would think that way, where it's like, oh, shouldn't you feel sympathy for this person? Like, even though they've done these atrocious things to women or minorities or marginalized people. And I'm like, no, I don't feel sorry for them. Anyway, you get to know Mr. Crump a little more. He's a very angry person and he hates rich people. So, like I said, I want to sympathize with Mr. Crump. This is kind of how I grew up, without the anti-Semitism, of course. Ugh. Like, when I grew up in the environment I grew up in, it was very much the rich versus the poor. Like, rich people were out for us every fucking day of our lives when I was a child. And we grew up with this disdain towards them. And that makes me want to sympathize with a character like Mr. Crump. But of course, he's an anti-Semitic piece of shit, so I can't. So, LOL. Anyway, as him and Mulder, like, feel each other out, sometimes I wish literally, because if Mr. Crump was not an anti-Semitic piece of shit, I would ship him and Mulder. Their chemistry is insane, all right? I would love to see these two kings, like, run around and have adventures and an affair. If Mr. Crump was not this anti-Semitic piece of shit, which he is. Anyway, Mulder, he refers to Mulder as Jewish, and is this the episode that started the headcanon of Mulder being Jewish? The episode Kaddish in season 4 kind of hints at that. Kaddish is a wonderful episode. I can't wait to review it. It's so fucking good. That's where the woman gets a zombie husband, and I'm like, let them be happy, okay? Like, she deserves that, all right? She deserves her hot zombie husband, all right? So, Mulder, one of the things that this episode tries to do, and I don't think it quite accomplishes it. It tries to do a lot of things, and it doesn't quite accomplish that. A biting fly is on my hand, and it's about to drive me off a fucking wall. Is that it wants to have this commentary on classism and privilege, and it doesn't quite get there. So Mulder is a privileged white man. He was born a privileged white man. He'll die a privileged white man. And I think Mulder being born into privilege and wealth and being that entitled shaped the person he was, particularly on his work in the X-Files. Many people have said if Mulder was a woman, like if the roles were reversed, and Scully was like this believer in UFOs and alien abduction, she wouldn't even be an FBI agent. Because in the field she's in, she has to be taken seriously just to get by, like just to make it. Mulder is a privileged white man, and so people will indulge him. He's not just a privileged white man, he is a wealthy privileged white man, okay? Mulder came from wealth. And anyone who says, oh, Mulder never acted like he came from wealth, I'm like, okay, every fucking breath he takes, he talks about his family's 40 fucking houses in Martha's Vineyard or Rhode Island. I'm like, okay, but yeah, he never acts like he came from wealth, right? This episode very much shows just how privileged Mulder is. It has some great little writing touches. And David Duchovny's acting in this episode is not bad. And I know I get down on my boy a lot, but when he does some good acting, I will give him credit for it. He acts like he cares about this role, which is more than I can say about the majority of X-Files episodes David Duchovny acts in, or the majority of any role he acts in. He's actually putting forth effort. And I think that's what makes this one of the episodes where I tolerate Mulder better. Like, the way David plays Mulder in this episode in regards to Mr. Crump and his life comes off as Mulder just being ignorant. He doesn't understand these things because he came from a place of privilege. I think if David had, like, not fucking cared about the role like he usually does, it would be just him coming off as this petulant jackass to Mr. Crump. But he has some really good moments. And a lot of that, I think, is Vince Gilligan's writing. There's a scene where Mr. Crump is like, he's like, well, tell me, how did this begin? And Mr. Crump was like, well, I didn't go to work that day. And Mulder's like, why didn't you go to work that morning? And Mr. Crump is like, it's raining and you cannot shingle roofs in the rain. And I'm like, of course Mulder wouldn't do that. He's never had to manually make a living, ever. Like, his family was rich as fuck. Like, why would that even cross his mind? A really good metaphor is the mom in Arrested Development, and she's talking to, I think she's talking to her sons, and she says, how much could one banana cost? $8? And I'm like, that's Mulder talking to Mr. Crump. Like, Mulder's always come from this place of privilege. And that hasn't just shaped Mulder's life, it has shaped his work on the X-Files. Like, his father had this prestigious place in the State Department, and his family was super fucking rich. You know, he came from this very prestigious family. Of course, people are going to indulge him, because that's what happens with white men in America, with wealthy white men in America. They are indulged and given allowances and privileges that poor people, women, marginalized people, minorities don't ever get. Like, and Mr. Crump, you know, he's had to think on his feet and be canny almost from the day he was born, you know, because he's a poor man. And even, like, comparing Mulder and Scully, like, you see that. I've always got this feeling that the Scully family, especially when Scully was growing up, didn't have a lot of money. Like, her dad had to climb his way up through the ranks in the Navy. She came from this large Catholic family. You know, money might have been pretty fucking tight. So they didn't have, like, 40 fucking houses on the vineyard like Mulder's family did, you know. Mulder, you rich fucking bastard. Anyway, and then just in the two fields Scully was in, like the medical field and becoming an FBI agent, like, she had to be smart. She had to be canny. She had to work her way up to get there and fight for every rung of the ladder she climbed. And Mulder didn't really have to do that. I mean, I know the show keeps going on about how he was a brilliant criminal profiler, even though we never fucking see that, except in 2 episodes maybe, and even not really there. I mean, Scully's the one doing all the fucking profiling. So, like, of course, like, nepotism, like, Mulder was indulged because of his privilege. Like, that's something I don't think the fandom acknowledges enough, is just how privileged Mulder is, and how this show tries to make him into a sympathetic character when the majority of the audience will not sympathize with him because he's just a privileged white man. Like, someone was talking a few months ago on Twitter about how Mulder was this groundbreaking character because he believed in these things. And I was thinking, like, oh yes, a white man in a suit who's always right. I've never fucking seen that before. And I think that's why the majority of the fandom loves Scully, because she's fucking relatable. Like, she's this outsider in this a game where she has to think on her feet. Another thing about Mulder is he's terrible at thinking on his feet, and I almost wonder if his, like, lack of common sense comes from just growing up that privileged and that entitled and having things handed to him. There's also people that say Mulder uses his privilege to help people. He does not. Mulder uses his privilege to help himself on this selfish quest for validation he has. If he helps, he brings more harm to people, victims who he needs to be advocating for, than any kind of help. So, fuck that way of thinking. Anyway, him and Mr. Crump get off to a rocky start because Mr. Crump fucking hates rich people. And again, I want to say Slay King, because that's how I feel, but like seriously, rich people, come on, man. But again, I can't because he's just a terrible anti-Semitic person. I feel no sympathy for him. But him and Mulder do forge this really sweet rapport. He tells Mulder, he calls him Crump, and he's like, Mr. Crump, if you're going to call me something, you're going to put Mr. in front of it. And I like that. When I was growing up, it was very much the poor versus the rich. And let me tell you, the people in my community, we love to have a rich person on the hook, okay? Like owing us a debt. We enjoyed that, to see the tables turned. And I think that's some of what Mr. Crump's feeling. And then eventually Mulder earns his respect and he calls him Mr. Mulder. And that's a beautiful moment. It would be great if Mr. Crump was not a piece of shit. Like, again, I was watching the Postmodern Prometheus with my spouse, and I told him, like, these X-Files episodes, they just build this beautiful story and this wonderful world, and they insert one little fucking unnecessary thing that just fucking ruins it. And like in that case of the Postmodern Prometheus, it's like making the protagonist a fucking rapist. It ruins the episode. And it's the same with Drive. I'm like, it's wonderful. It has this interesting character of Mr. Crump. It has this bond he forges with Mulder. It has Mulder and Scully running around being badass. And then you have to throw in this anti-Semitism? Like, what is the fucking reason for that, Vince Gilligan show? Like, why? Anyway, Mulder goes to a gas station. He figures out as he speeds up, Mr. Crump gets better, these symptoms are alleviated. And he's like, what happened to you? He also goes to a gas station, and the yokels at the gas station haze Mulder, which I think is hilarious. That's also something that would have happened in my neighborhood when I was a kid. Like a rich person comes in throwing their weight around, and the gas station owner just doesn't turn the pumps on. And they're like, fuck you, you rich bastard. So also Mulder goes on the wrong side of the car to pump the gas. Like, he pulls up on the wrong side, and I'm pretty sure that happened more often than not on his road trips with Scully. And Scully just let it happen to just mess with him. I also do that a lot, so that's relatable. So Scully, meanwhile, is going off on her little side quest to investigate, to do all the fucking work. I mean, wow, what a surprise. Scully doing all the fucking profiling and work in this episode, and Mulder dicking around, literally. So they go to the Crumps' house. They find this dog losing its fucking mind. Scully has a weird track record with dogs that she has to wrestle paranormal shit out of. She did it in Ice and in this episode. It's like the Phineas and Ferb, the evil professor. He says, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I would have exactly 2 nickels. But it's kind of weird that it happened twice. And that's how Scully feels about dogs, savage dogs who are trying to kill her, who have paranormal secrets. Anyway, this poor dog, unlike the dog in Ice, dies. His brain explodes and blood just pops all over everyone. Scully's wearing a very cute anti-contamination suit. Looks like a space suit. It's very hot and I love it. They go to the Crumps' neighbor, who is this poor deaf woman. This poor woman. She's just vibing in her house, watching her 1970s closed-captioned porno, living her best goddamn life. They look in her house, and she has these two parakeets that are dead, presumably killed by the same thing that killed the dog and infected the Crumps. And I got really sad. These parakeets look just like the ones I had when I was little. Their names were Fidget and Karkar. And I love those birds. And this made me really sad when I saw that they had died. So, not slay. Isn't that what the kids say? Like, not slay. Anyway, it's beautiful weather out here, but the gnats are bad. So, the Scully just scares this poor woman half to death. Like, this poor woman's vibing in her house, watching her porno, just having some downtime. And then suddenly these, like, fuckers in spacesuits roll up. And she's like, what the hell's going on? Scully also tries to calm the poor woman down. She's like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And the woman's like, you're not, like, comforting me. I don't know you. Anyway, the poor woman, they, like, get her out of there. And Scully says, like, what's going on? You know, we have all these dead people and animals. There's, like, dead crows, too, like, littering the ground. And that's really sad. Because I like crows. They're cool. So Scully tells the other scientist who's with her, she's like, but this deaf woman was unaffected. Why? And then Scully pulls off her anti-contamination helmet. And the scientist is like, what the fuck are you doing? And Scully's like, what if it's a sound? And I'm like, Scully did that. She pulled off her helmet in front of this scientist who believes this is a highly quarantined area just to be dramatic. Like, that's the only reason she did it, is just to be fucking dramatic. Which I love. Like, Mulder obviously is the drama queen of the two, but I really think Scully is, like, low-key dramatic, and I fucking love her for it. So she pulls off her helmet, and she's like, what if this is a sound? So, she calls Mulder, and Mr. Crump's not doing well at all. Mulder has to drive, like, 100 miles an hour, like, just to keep him sane, like, from going into this coma and his head exploding. So Scully's like, you know, this is... The Navy has installed something. I'm not going to attempt to explain how this technical things work. But it has installed this in this rural community in Nevada, or however you want to say it. You say Nevada, I say Nevada. Let's all get drunk. I guess, isn't that how that song goes? Or that's a Jimmy Buffett song. Right. Let's all get drunk. I love that song. Love Jimmy Buffett. Love Jimmy Buffett. I want to see Jimmy Buffett in concert. I know I'm rambling right now, but I love Jimmy Buffett. So, Jimmy Buffett's also from Mobile. So that's pretty slay. So, Scully tells Mulder, she's like, whatever the Navy was doing out there, they were broadcasting these weird transmissions from these radio towers, and it has affected people in this way. It has affected their inner ear in a way where their brain explodes, pretty much. Unless for some reason, and I don't think it's ever explained, if they go really fast, it alleviates this. So Scully tells Mulder, here's what we're going to do, okay? They also have to drive west. I also don't know why that is. I don't think it's ever explained either. Does it get it closer to the other Navy towers? It's the X-Files, okay? It's fueled by bad writing, is what I'm saying. So, she says, look, when you get to the coast of California, which is where he's headed, because as he says, like, we're running out of west. They're in Nevada. Scully's like, I'm going to be there with a large fucking needle. We're going to insert it in Mr. Crump's ear. This is the point in the episode where I like wanted to turn it off. I'm like, nah, nope. I have had enough sketchy shit inserted in my ear. Thank you very much. But I toughed it out. So she says, we're going to insert it in Mr. Crump's ear and pretty much he'll go deaf, but it'll save his life. And Mulder tells Mr. Crump, you know, if you die, you can't stick it to the government for doing this to you. Mr. Crump also tells Mulder, he's like, I know what the government's doing. And he's like giving these examples of all these conspiracy theories. And then he's like shooting little kids' gonads full of radiation. Which is just like Cards Against Humanity shit, I think. And Mulder has this look on his face and he's like, oh shit, someone crazier than me. Oh my God. Mulder's like, I'm kind of turned on right now. I love this. So, yeah, I ship Mr. Crump and Mulder if Mr. Crump wasn't an anti-Semitic piece of shit. So, and then Mr. Crump is like, yeah, I have to survive. That's what it's all about. And that's a beautiful message. That's some wonderful writing. And Vince Gilligan has a resolution to this by killing Mr. Crump? Question mark? Like, what? So, okay, so he's going to set up this beautiful message about surviving and how that is the ultimate victory. The best revenge is a life well lived, I think, which I think is a great message. And he's going to resolve that and bring the story to a close by fucking killing Mr. Crump. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Vince Gilligan, what was the purpose of this? Why did we have this wonderful, well-developed character? Why do we have this rapport with Mulder and this wonderful story and this amazing message? And you're just going to fucking kill this guy. So Mr. Crump's brain explodes. Okay, I don't feel too sorry for him. But it's stupid. And I think it really highlights one of the vital flaws in the X-Files that ultimately destroyed the show, is we never got any wins. Like, the show was so obsessed with making these dark storylines, which is fine. Okay, I like dark stuff. But it never balanced it out with moments of joy or lightness, where the characters felt happiness and joy. Or if they did, it was moments and it was just brutally ripped away from them the next episode. Like, this is where the X-Files failed. I think a majority of the audience just gave up. Like, they were like, why should we watch this? Why should we watch these characters, particularly Scully, abused time and time again and never have any joy in their life? Like, and they just gave up. Like, that's my story. Like, I watched the X-Files when I was a baby up until season 9. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Why would I want to watch this? Like, why would I want to watch these beloved characters just abused over and over again and brutalized and traumatized? Like, there's no fucking reason. So I just stopped. And I think that's a lot of what the fandom does and did. That's why so many people, like, refuse to believe the X-Files went on past season 8. Like, they were like, no. Like, if it's going to get this bad, we will just end it at season 8 and say, like, this is the happy ending these characters deserved. And I don't blame them. Like, that's completely and totally valid, because the show was so poorly written, like, it couldn't do that. Like, it couldn't balance these dark, terrible storylines with moments of hope and happiness where the characters come out with some joy and happiness in their life. Like, and I can't put too much blame on Vince Gilligan for that, because look who was running this show. A narcissistic guy like Chris Carter, who believed his writing was superior to everyone's when it was absolutely not. It was terrible. So they get to the coast and Mulder pees. And when I was 14, it kind of made me lose my fucking mind. I was like, is he peeing in front of Scully? Also, Scully, God bless her, she doesn't look away. She's just like, she's like checking him out. And look, Mulder stands, who believe Mulder has the biggest and most perfect dick to ever exist. The way he's holding his junk to pee, it looks like it's pretty fucking small, okay? I don't have anything to prove that except the way he's holding it, but it looks pretty fucking small, okay? So, the next scene, you get Kersh, the mean James Earl Jones, and he's talking to Mulder and Scully. He tells Scully, he's like, you apologize for Mulder a lot. And I'm like, boy, has he got her ticket, right? He also tells Mulder, he's like, hey, you can quit. Like, it'd make my job a lot easier. And Mulder just, like, has a fucking hissy fit like a 2-year-old and walks out of the office. And then Mr. Kersh tells Scully, he's like, look, I don't fucking care how many people you save. Scully also says Mulder's work saved some people's lives. And I'm like, Mulder didn't do anything, baby. You did all that work. Okay, just give yourself that credit, Scully. You deserve it. I also want to add an addendum. So Scully tells Mulder, like, when you get to the coast, we're going to insert this needle into Mr. Crump's ear. Yikes. And my spouse, who I was watching this with, brought up a very good point. He said, well, you know, the cop motorcycles, like, pull up alongside this, station wagon that Mulder and Mr. Crump are riding in, and to hand them the cell phone to talk to Scully. And he's like, why couldn't they pull up next to the station wagon while it's still going and toss Scully in the fucking window? Like a goddamn cat. It would be like, the Fastball special in X-Men where Colossus throws Wolverine. Any 80s, 90s kids who read X-Men will probably get that reference. That's what they do with Scully. They'd just be like, throw her in like a little ball, and she like unfurls with this giant fucking needle, and she's like, all right, let's fucking go. Let's fucking do this. the Dana Scully Fastball special. That's what I'm calling it. Anyway, Kersh tells Scully, he's like, I don't care if you had saved kids. Fuck that. He's like, if you would have saved children, I wouldn't have cared. And I'm like, God damn, Kersh, you stone cold, man. I know Kersh is a bag of dicks, but I kind of love him. He's like Krychek in that way. He's a bag of dicks, but he's fun to watch. And that's the episode Drive. This was a really fun episode. I think it was trying to make a commentary on classism and privilege, and that was fun to pick apart. Has some really great moments, has some wonderful action. Bryan Cranston, of course, knocks it out of the park. I told my spouse I want to see a episode of The X-Files where Mulder, like, goes to this hub universe where he meets all of Bryan Cranston's characters. The dad from Malcolm in the Middle, Jerry Seinfeld's creepy dentist, Walter White, and Mr. Crump. It's like, what is it? The Spider-Man meme where Spider-Man's like pointing at each other. It's just all the Bryan Cranston characters, and they're like pointing at each other. So I'm going to call this review Mulder in the Middle. On Twitter, I put out a poll, and I was like, what should I call this review? And it was just all joking about Bryan Cranston's different roles. But I like Mulder in the Middle, like Malcolm in the Middle, so that's what I'm going to call this. And have a great day. Follow me on Twitter. I am at raccoons_dead. Follow me on YouTube here, of course. Follow me on Tumblr. I am at Just Awful X-Men Art. Or follow me on Instagram. I am at Dead Raccoons Draws It. Follow me on DeviantArt. I am at Dead/Raccoons. And I will see you lovely people in the next one. Bye.